Great goalie play from Andrei Vasilevsky wasn't enough as the Tampa Bay Lightning lost 4-2 to the Florida Panthers, with 3 of their 4 goals coming on special teams. I will recap last night's loss with Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers right after this.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this post-game edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making both of our podcasts your first listen of the day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now you can win up to $250 after you place your first $5 bet, and you could do that all on FanDuel. We are here at Amalie Arena, where the Florida Panthers defeated the Tampa Bay Lightning by a final score of 4-2, with the Florida Panthers not getting a single 5-on-5 goal, 3 goals on special teams, and then 1 via an empty net to ice the game. So, and here to break this down here on this first segment of both of our individual podcasts, he is Josh Sperber of Locked On Lightning, and great to be connecting with you in person. And what are your biggest takeaways from tonight's matchup between these two teams?
Yeah, well, first was obviously the special teams. I mean, that played such a huge role. It was something that Coach Cooper was talking about during pretty much the entire postgame show. The special teams for the Lightning, for the most part this season, has been an advantage. They're in the top 5 in power play scoring in the entire league, and in the top half in the penalty kill. Might have dropped down a little bit today, but, I mean, that was really it. You know, those 2 shorthanded goals for the Panthers sealed the game pretty much. And without those, things might have been different. It could have gone into overtime. Maybe the Lightning would have gotten lucky and grabbed one, but we saw great goalie play from today's game. And the simple fact is the Panthers won the battle on special teams, and that's the big reason they won the game.
Yeah, Spencer Knight in goal for this one for the Panthers. Andrei Vasilevsky in goal for the Tampa Bay Lightning in this one. And the Panthers came into this matchup shorthanded another forward, where Jesper Boquist is already out day-to-day. Then Jonah Gadjevich is out day-to-day, which they recalled Rasmus Asplund for this one to insert into the fourth line for the Panthers in this one. But really, the Panthers, their ability to win draws early on, that Sam Bennett line was winning a lot of their draws early. John Cooper was mixing some of the changes for early on, putting on the fourth line, and then eventually putting on the top line for the Tampa Bay Lightning in this matchup for them. And really, that's a line that Paul Maurice went back to in the most recent games since Sam Bennett was out with that illness just a few days ago. But really, that one really set the tone for the Florida Panthers. And also Spencer Knight really set the tone as well in goal on a big stop by Brayden Point. At one point in the third period, John Cooper separated Nikita Kucherov and Brayden Point, but then went back to them, and then it resulted in a goal for Tampa Bay. So what was it? Any takeaways from the Panthers' ability to take away Nikita Kucherov and Brayden Point in this one?
Yeah, it's difficult to do that in general. This was the first time that Kucherov hasn't scored a point in his last 9 games, and he was also on record watch as one more assist he needs to pass Martin St. Louis and now become second all-time in Tampa Bay Lightning history. And I don't think Point was taken out of the game. That I'm going to disagree with you there. I think Spencer Knight just played an incredible game. That first period shot that you were talking about, that part I absolutely agree with. I think that is a completely tone-setting save from Spencer Knight there, because time and time again at Lightning games, we've seen them score early, and if they score early, they tend to pile it on a lot more. This is one of the best offensive teams in the NHL, and if you can take out, a majority of their offense, keep them silent on the power play, again, a lot of that has to do with some saves, because from Vasilevsky and Knight last night, we saw some spectacular saves in close, too. There were a couple of those little flip over the goalie shots that Knight just stonewalled, skater on crease. I mean, he made some really difficult saves, and that was the most key. It wasn't about taking a star out of the game, because Kucherov certainly had some chances. He was just stonewalled by Knight like the rest of the Lightning were.
Yeah, and for Brayden Point, that's 18 points in the last 8 games for him. Just an incredible run of those two. What they've been able to take on their load recently for the Tampa Bay Lightning, basically all season. I mean, Braden Point and Sam Reinhart are battling for the top of the Rocket Richard, even though right now Leon Draisaitl is in the lead for that in the NHL. But I mean, for the Panthers, they got that power play goal off a redirection from Sam Reinhart for his 21st of the season. But really, for the Panthers, they did not get to the net front early on for Andre Vasilevsky. There was a few times where it was clear lanes to the net, and Vasilevsky just easily getting the glove on it, even putting a little mustard on one shot that Sam Bennett had. And really made the difference when the Panthers were able to get those higher percentage shots. We saw it with the tip in by Sam Reinhart on that power play, and then even the 2 turnovers that the Tampa Bay Lightning had while they were on the same power play. And in that same stretch with the 2 penalty kills that the Panthers had, no shots on goal that they allowed for Tampa Bay there.
Yeah, I mean, both teams had their chances, but it felt like they were few and far between. The crowd was very involved in this game. I don't think I saw a single empty seat. Plenty of red, obviously plenty of Lightning fans. The Lightning fan base is always going to show out, but you can kind of tell how a game goes. Like their big plays, you can hear the crowd. And it seemed like every 5 minutes or so, you hear like a big gasp and a shout from either a Panthers fan group or the rest of the arena in blue and white. So there weren't as many of those just huge plays. And honestly, I feel like most of the things I heard the crowd yelling for again were those saves. The goalies played such a huge factor in this game against 2 teams, not just with some of the best offenses in the league, not just, 2 teams in playoff contention, but 2 teams with superstar players. Like you said, you got 2 guys on the Rocket Richard watch list. Might not want to ask either of us who is going to win that because we'll say different people, but that's an issue for another time. You've got 2 goalies stopping some of the game's best players on both sides. Barkov had nothing. Reinhart had that empty netter. Kucherov had a bunch of shots missed. Point had that one beautiful goal, but that really seemed to be it. It just didn't seem like the star players were as big of a factor in this game as they usually were. And it had nothing to do with their game being off. It was simply the fact that goalies dominated this game.
Yeah, the goalies definitely did in this one. And Barkov, after a great game on Friday against the St. Louis Blues, where an individual effort really helped them draw the penalty, and then eventually he got the game winner then on that 2-1 win. Panthers win 4 in a row. But also on the Panthers side of things, 10 shorthanded goals on the season now for them, with AJ Greer getting on the score sheet there, and also Eetu Luostarinen for the Florida Panthers, his 5th of the season. For the Panthers side of things, I mean, they won a Stanley Cup on elite penalty killing, and how they were able to replace that with losing Kevin Stenlund. They're not necessarily getting the face-off wins for them on the PK. They're not always killing it at the highest rate, but they have an absolute weapon when they're able to just come up the ice with speed, disrupt it either at the red line or at the blue line. I mean, one of them was an attempt at a drop pass in the neutral zone, and then the Panthers were able to go where the second shorthanded goal that they scored, it was beaten by Vasilevsky top shelf on that one for that one. And really, again, it came down to those higher percentage shots that the Panthers had versus what they weren't getting earlier.
And another point about the Panthers, just skill on the power play, really in any special team scenarios. There are only 2 players since 1992 who have more points on special teams than Sam Reinhart right now. The leader in that category, a legend in this very building, Dave Andreychuk, who had 38 in 1992 with the Buffalo Sabres. But just to make that little lightning connection, but at the same time, it does show the dominance of Sam Reinhart. If you can do something that hasn't been done in 30 plus years, that is remarkably impressive. And Reinhart, obviously a big reason why the Panthers won the Stanley Cup, beat the Lightning in that first round series. And then again tonight, he stepped up on special teams when the Panthers needed him, when that was really going to be the deciding factor between these 2 teams. I think that's something both teams knew, because they're so strong on their power play offenses, and the best one had to win. And it wasn't the power play, it was the shorthand that defined the game for the Panthers. But still, special teams nonetheless played a really important role. And with a guy like Sam Reinhart leading the charge, good things are usually going to happen for the Panthers.
Yeah, after scoring 57 goals last season, getting that new contract for him, he's here for 8 years, and him and Barkov as a pair on the same line, even though they're not currently playing on the same line right now. It's just a force that the Panthers are that they put on other teams night in and night out for them. But that's going to do it for this first segment of this post-game edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. In segment number 2, we are both going to go individually into our own podcast to continue this breakdown of this 4-2 Florida Panthers win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. So keep it right here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning.
Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million plus in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in the month of December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out, so you can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week on Prize Picks, I'm eyeing the hockey board. Look at Nikita Kucherov to get back on the scoring list with at least a goal and assist tomorrow. And I'm thinking Braden Point is going to put another one in as well against the Florida Panthers. It's so simple to make my picks and have fun with friends while potentially catching out fast. So just download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup with the code LOCKEDONNHL. Prize Picks, run your game. We are back in the studio. Big thanks to Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers. Even though they are our rivals, still a good podcast to subscribe to. Definitely good to support. Panthers did end up with a victory, and it was certainly not for the Lightning playing badly. That's something that we talked about in the last segment, and we'll talk a little bit about it more tomorrow. But in this one, I want to talk about one of the lines that I really liked for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that was line 2. On the stat sheet, they didn't really shine. Connor Geekie finished with a -1, and Brandon Hagel and Anthony Cirelli both finished with a -2. A rarity on that line, as Cirelli is in the top 5 in the league in terms of plus-minus for forwards. And the last couple of games, Connor Geekie has been the right wing on that second forward line. Now, a staple of the Lightning's second forward line is Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel. I don't think that is going to change. And I don't expect it to change. Their chemistry has been great. And it's been one of the reasons the Lightning have had such success this season and are the leading goal scorers in the NHL to this point. Right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning have scored 122 goals. Only the Jets and now the Panthers have more than that, with a lot of those coming in last night's loss. Connor Geekie coming in on that right wing, obviously not part of the dynamic duo that is Hagel and Cirelli. But Geekie's been moved around on lines this year. Predominantly, he's stayed on the third or the second line. And honestly, most of his time has been on the second line because I think John Cooper realizes the same thing that I do and the same thing that a lot of other Lightning fans, I'm sure, like yourselves, probably realize that just the chemistry works with Geekie. Just adding to that Hagel and Cirelli line really makes for something dynamic. And it's good because the two-way aspects of it, Geekie is he's still learning the ropes. I'm not saying he's a bad defender because he's not, but there are a few forwards in hockey that have the same level of defensive ability that Cirelli and Hagel do. So Geekie might not match them defensively on that line, but the way he plays his offense and the way that the three work together is a big plus. Cirelli and Hagel are good enough at the two-man game themselves that their chemistry can sometimes be a little too good in that it can sometimes take the third forward kind of out of the equation a little bit. With Connor Geekie, that is, I think, less damaging because he's not a guy who needs the puck on his stick to make plays. He can move without the puck. He can find some open spaces. He can create contact and make those physical plays as well. And his ability just to get himself open in a variety of different ways is a massive boost on that Hagel and Cirelli line. Their chemistry themselves could honestly be a line. I could see them going 2 against 3, and they'd go toe for toe with most lines in the NHL, possibly. I mean, they're just that strong. They're that fast. And Geekie has that speed. He certainly has that strength. He was getting hit hard by the Florida Panthers in his first regular season rivalry game, and he just kept bouncing back up. He got hit and was stuck on the ground for a little while in the second period early on, within the first minute of the period, I believe. And by the time the Lightning got in their power play about 5 or so minutes later, Geekie was back on the ice right after. He's just a tough kid. And I think adding that toughness to a line of 2 smaller players in Cirelli and Hagel can help. I mean, not only does Geekie mesh with them offensively, but Geekie is just bigger than Hagel and Cirelli are. Brandon Hagel and Anthony Cirelli are both on the smaller side. Geekie, even at 20 years old, is listed at 6'4", 207. Cirelli's under 200 pounds at 6'1", 190, and Hagel, deceptively tall at 6'2", and weighs 180. Now, I'm not saying those guys are getting tossed around like rag dolls every night. They're both very tough, and they're very strong players, so they can take a hit. But having another big guy like Geekie, who's certainly not afraid to mix it up, is always going to be helpful for a line like that, because some guys can, if a defender lays a big-time hit on Cirelli and Hagel, you best believe Connor Geekie is going to come right back at him. It actually happened in preseason. I believe it was the Ottawa game. It was pretty early in the preseason, and it was one of the first times I think I saw Connor Geekie play live. And in that game, as I'm sure many of you remember, there was a hit, and Geekie instantly came to the defense of his teammates. And it I think was one of the reasons that the Lightning were so keen to bring him on the roster at the start of the season, which is not that common with brand new rookies. Geekie had only played in the minor leagues in hockey, spending much of last year in the Western Hockey League with a Swift Current, finishing with the highest plus-minus rating in the league. So, I mean, he clearly proved that he was NHL ready and has done so game after game in the pros. The Lightning have been using him in a couple of different lines, just kind of testing out the ways that work, and I really think that it works. And I think that the Lightning have been keeping it. Some injuries might be offsetting things. Nick Paul was another player like Connor Geekie who left the game a little bit early. Paul did walk out of the stadium fine, unclear on what his injury status is going to be. We'll try and update you on that as much as we can. But, you know, without too much more roster turnover with injuries and trades and whatnot, it really seems like the Lightning have found their lines. It seems like Geekie is going to be more of a fixture on line 2 going forward, and I think that's a good thing. It not only helps it helps Geekie develop as a player. Just getting him to play with guys who have been in the league a while. Cirelli is someone who was a key in those Stanley Cup runs, and Brandon Hagel has been on a couple different teams. He's been traded. I mean, he knows the ropes of the league. Those are 2 really good guys for Geekie to learn from. And a big place that they help is on special teams, something that was a key component of yesterday's loss against Florida. And though he didn't talk much about specific players, Cooper was explaining the importance of special teams after Sunday's loss against Florida.
This game is full of momentum. So when you score 2 shorthanded goals and 1 power play, which team do you think is going to get momentum? And I don't care who you are. If you say, "Oh, we're going to give up 2 shorthanded, and then we're going to get the momentum," it's not how it works. And so it was probably happy the period ended, and then we regrouped and came back in the third and scored 1 and had some legit looks. and their goalie kicked them out.
It's clear that Connor Geekie certainly didn't hinder that second line on special teams, and he was one of the players that had some really good looks, both in even strength and on some power plays. And those looks, I think, were in some cases, especially the one where he had a shot right on the net that night, just stonewalled him as Geekie wasn't able to lift it up high enough among the goalie. And that was just one example of ways that Hagel and Cirelli have opened up plays for Geekie. And the Lightning traded a franchise player for him. They traded one of their key stars in Mikhail Sergachev for Geekie. They wouldn't have done that if they didn't believe in him and didn't want to commit to developing him into the star that the Lightning and many Lightning fans like myself certainly believe that he can be. I think Geekie does have star potential, and maybe the best way to unlock it is staying on this line with Cirelli and Hagel. It has been some great teamwork between that trio. We'll see if they are back on the same line when the Lightning go to Miami to take on the defending champion Florida Panthers. I'll preview the second game of a home and home when we return here on Locked On Lightning. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W, and I love betting on which Lightning players will score a goal and how many points that they'll put up in the game. It's exciting. It makes me think that I know a little bit something about what's going on in the game. But FanDuel also has bets for just about anything. Touchdowns, goals, assists, you name it. They've got bets for anything that you want to put money on. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Lightning, the final segment of today's show as we get ready for Lightning and Panthers Part 2. Lightning had only 3 shots in the second period, 2-0. They lost in that period. The first and third, each team put in a goal. And let's get right to it. I mean, first and foremost, it's the special teams. You heard what Coop said in the last segment. It was the momentum of those shorthanded goals that really just broke the Lightning's back. Braden Point came in with a beautifully taken goal in the third period, but you go into the final couple minutes, it was before the 1 minute mark, I believe before the 92nd mark, when Andrei Vasilevskiy was taken out of the game and the Lightning went empty net. It took about a minute, but the Panthers got their empty net goal. So, I mean, this was certainly a game that the Lightning had a chance to win. I definitely think that early on, it looked like it was the Lightning's game to lose. There was some chippiness early, you could certainly see the tension of the rivalry. But I mean, there were just a lot of looks that the Lightning could have had that they might get tomorrow night. You know, it's a little bit different goalie-wise because the Panthers are going from their backup goalie, Spencer Knight, to their starting goalie in Bobrovsky, more than likely, where it's likely that, you know, back-to-back, Vasilevskiy is not going to play, and Johansson is going to play on the road against Florida. The Panthers' backup goalie somehow outperformed Vasilevskiy. It was the Panthers who shot more shots, 19 saves for Knight. For Vasilevskiy, he had 23, but some of the saves that Knight made were just absolutely incredible. I mean, Braden Point had a shot in tight. Nick Paul, Connor Geekie each had shots where they just couldn't pick the puck over the outstretched pad of Knight. I mean, Vasilevskiy had some great saves. He had a butterfly one on Reinhart early on and another one later in the game that was just, I mean, my jaw dropped to the floor. That's a lot more normal to see from Vasilevskiy. So Johansson likely will hopefully win the goalie battle against Bobrovsky, as Spencer Knight may have against Vasilevskiy. But, I mean, you got to give both the goalies some credit because just a fantastic game played in between the pipes. And I think the Lightning just need to be a little bit more ready for the physicality. Within the first minute of the game, there was almost a fight as the two teams, got a little chippy, a little chirpy right next to the boards. And Florida definitely drew first blood, so the Lightning have to be ready from that. I mean, the Lightning are a team that's pretty successful to being out-muscled by other teams in the league. That was a lot more evident at the beginning of the season. Lately, the hit disparity between the Lightning and their opponents has closed down a little bit, but the Lightning are a team that more goes on their speed. They've got guys that can hit, and they certainly did. Hedman, Chernak, McDonough. I mean, a lot of Lightning players laid down some big hits on the Panthers as the teams were trading it back and forth. It's what you expect in a rivalry game. And it just didn't seem like the Lightning at points were ready for some of that physicality. They really took exception to, to some of the hits, that they got from the Panthers players. It got kind of chippy. I think the Panthers got into their heads a little bit. Do I think that's why Florida ended up winning the game? No, Florida ended up winning the game because they scored those two shorthanded goals and because they got a power play goal. They won the special teams battle. But John Cooper said that since they were on the wrong end of the game last night, they might have a better chance tonight when the teams get a rematch.
We're on the wrong end of this one, so the quicker we get to turn the page, probably the better for us.
And as I mentioned, certainly some things that the Lightning can work on, and it's a good mindset to have. Obviously you're upset about taking that loss to a team like the Panthers. The Lightning had a chance to gain some ground. They do still have 4 games in hand on the Panthers, but are behind them by 8 points. If everything went right, the Lightning could have had a chance to swing back into first place. Instead, it's now the Panthers who grabbed that first place lead. Right now, it's Florida and Toronto neck and neck with a game in hand. Florida has one more win, 11 losses and 2 losses in overtime for both the Panthers and Maple Leafs. And the Lightning are hoping to play spoiler once again to the Panthers, but it's going to be more than just special teams that they're going to have to improve on if they're going to try and get a win at the home of the defending champs.
To me, it was a really good hockey game. You told me that we were going to limit Florida to 0 5-on-5 goals, minimal chances all night. I would have really liked their chances, but when you lose special teams 3-0, that's a hard one to bounce back from. So unfortunately, and fortunately, a ton for us, special teams is part of the game because we've been on the right side of it probably much more than we haven't. Tonight we weren't. It cost us.
And that's why I said special teams was going to be one of the bigger keys to tomorrow's games. Like, what team who won the special teams battle won the game last night, plain and simple. The Lightning need to take more advantage of the Panthers' mistakes, because if this game is even half as hard-hitting as it was on Sunday, then the Panthers are going to take some penalties again. Each team had some guys in the penalty box. 1 power play goal scored and 2 shorties by the Panthers, who had 2 power play attempts. The Lightning were scoreless on 3 power play attempts. So that is obviously, a number one. 2, I think the Lightning just need to get more luckier in goal. Both goalies were playing out of their heads last night, and you'll likely see 2 different ones. So someone's going to win the goal scoring battle. And for the Lightning, they also want to get the rest of that first line involved. Jake Gensel almost had a goal. Kucherov almost had a couple, but the of the 4 players that have been the best offensive players for the Lightning this season, Kucherov, Point, Hagel, Gensel. Braden Point got a goal. Gensel, no points. Kucherov held scoreless for the first time in his last 9. And Braden Point got himself 1. Hagel with a -2 and didn't get a point as well, only had 1 shot. So you got to get the first line more involved if you're the Lightning. But, some of this you can just chalk up to the fact that it was just a battle of 2 goalies, and Knight played better, saw fewer shots, and the Panthers got the job done. So the Lightning will have to do better on that power play, and hopefully no injuries were affected. There is some doubt about Nick Paul's status for tonight's game. We'll try and provide updates on our X account as soon as possible. Again, Connor Geekie may be held back. He did come back into the game, but we've seen that before. Before Nikita Kucherov got injured, he exited a game early, played the next or finished out the game, and then didn't play the next two. So you don't know how they're going to manage Geekie or Paul, and that's something that we're going to keep an eye on as well. But you just got to hope the Lightning don't add more injuries to the list. There's only one scratch in Gage Gonzalez, and the other one was Moser, who's on the injured list, the injured reserve now. So the Lightning are about as healthy as they can be for the next little while, and they just need to keep it that way. So we certainly hope Paul can get back healthy and that Geekie will stay ready to play. But I'd like to think Geekie especially is going to play. Paul is still a bit more uncertain. That is going to do it, though. That I am certain of for tonight's game. I want to thank all of you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steele and Flynn. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And this is Josh Sperber signing off, telling all of you, if you haven't already, to give us a like, a follow, a subscription, and maybe share some comments or questions in the YouTube comments. Feel free to send us a DM on Twitter. We're at LO_Lightning. You can follow us there as well for more updates throughout the week. And we'll try and update you about tonight's game as well as the other ones going on in December. So thank you again for tuning in. Have a wonderful holiday season and go Bolts.